Hi, my name is Pavas Mehra. I work with equity sales at Pareto Securities, and with me today I have Johan Spetz, our head of research and also analyst covering natural resources sector. Welcome, Johan.
Thank you.
So Johan, you recently published a report, a refreshed report of Africa Oil, and we currently have a buy rating of the stock with Swedish krona 16 as a target price. The stock is currently trading around 8, slightly below 9 kronas. What is your view of the investment case going forward?
So Africa Oil, it's a stock that's had a tough couple of years on the stock market. What we can see now is that when we look at the investment case right now, we think it's the most attractive it's been probably in at least 4 or 5 years. So we really urge people to take a closer look at Africa Oil here. When we look at the valuation, it's come down a lot, and we see a number of clear triggers over the coming 12 months that we want to go through with everyone. So first off, on the valuation side, the company is now valued by the market at around 400 million US in terms of market cap. And we can see that being fully backed up by just the company's cash position and the value of its listed and publicly traded equity holdings in Africa Energy and Eco Atlantic. So everything other than that we think is not taken into account in the current share price for the stock. So that's essentially what makes us bullish. So when we look at the triggers that we see going forward here, it's primarily 3 things. We think firstly that we are going to see a closing of the acquisition of producing assets in Nigeria, which we have been waiting for almost a year now. It was announced initially in late October last year. So we still think that that's gonna happen, and we think it's gonna happen now during the 4th quarter of this year. So with that closed, Africa Oil will have near-term production and become more of a full-cycle E&P company in that sense. Secondly, we think that there is going to be further resource growth coming from the exploration side within that portfolio of exploration companies, Africa Energy and Eco Atlantic in particular, over the coming 12 months. And then thirdly, we think that there should be a value put on the Kenya development project in the South Lokichar Basin in Kenya. That used to be the full story with Africa Oil, was that project. Now it's become more than that, but Kenya we think still is an economic and valuable project, and we think that the market is going to come around and look at Kenya more favorably once more over the coming year. FID for that project is scheduled for the 2nd half of next year. We think that that might be slightly further delayed. There is a risk for that, but still there should be more value put on Kenya than was reflected in the current share price. Going back just briefly to the Nigeria deal, we think that ultimately the net payment for Africa Oil is going to be around 200 million US, and we see that net interest that they're acquiring generating around 100 million US in operating cash flow in 2020. So clearly an attractive cash multiple being paid for that asset, we think.
And I mean, in your report, you've raised several value drivers for the stock moving forward. Could you please expand a bit more on some of these with focus on this slide as well?
Yeah, of course. So in this slide, you can see the value of the different components of Africa Oil as we see them, put into a relationship to the share price here. So everything here is in Swedish krona per Africa Oil share. So you can see the share price, that's the line there. And then you can see first off the net working capital position, essentially net cash of around 5 krona per share. You have the value of the listed holdings, Africa Energy and Eco Atlantic, that's another 2 SEK per share. So that takes you roughly to the share price today. And then you have the 3 value drivers going forward, which in our view should be of around equal value right now to Africa Oil. Firstly, the value creation we think is going to be demonstrated in Nigeria once the deal is closed and they can actually talk about what they've acquired. Secondly, the Kenya development project that we talked about. And finally, the upside that we see going forward from the exploration holdings that they have. So 3 clear drivers of roughly 3 per share going forward here that we're looking at.
Yeah. And when it comes to the triggers moving forward, we have a great illustration of that as well, which would be the next slide. This is more like out of a timeline perspective. Could you expand a bit on those?
Yeah, exactly. So this is just to highlight what we can expect over the coming 12 months out of Africa Oil, and we look at it on a quarter by quarter basis going forward for the next 5 quarters. You could roughly break it down into 3 different categories. It's the M&A activities, it's the project development side in Kenya, and it's the exploration activities in the exploration portfolio, equity portfolio, if we want to call it that. So this is just to give an illustration. That's a lot of things are going to happen over the next 12 months. We think that's going to change the current valuation essentially that we see in the markets.
Yeah, definitely. And moving further ahead, I mean, Africa Oil a couple of years back, they adapted a quite an unconventional way of working in their exploration strategy. And of course, these 3 companies that we're raising here are the result of that. Could you please expand a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I guess 2 years back when they embarked on this strategy of acquiring equity holdings in other exploration companies as opposed to the conventional way of doing it, which is that an oil company typically takes a direct working interest in a block which has exploration potential. Yeah. This, of course, raised a few eyebrows when they started this strategy. But I think that given what's happened in terms of drilling results out of these companies, that strategy has been fully vindicated and been really successful. So we have seen significant discoveries out of Africa Energy and Eco Atlantic since Africa Oil got involved. Well, actually, they were involved in Africa Energy since before, but since they officially rolled out this strategy, we've seen those discoveries being made. So, in the case of Africa Energy, if you follow that company, you'll know that earlier in 2019 they made a significant discovery offshore South Africa called Brulpada. In the case of Eco Atlantic, they have made significant discoveries in Guyana just in recent months here at Jethro and Joe. And I should add that both Africa Energy and Eco Atlantic, we cover them as separate companies in equity research at Pareto. So of course we can use a lot of that analysis in the research note that we just published here now on Africa Oil. So that gives us confidence that we have a good feeling for what those companies are doing. The third company here in the middle, Impact Oil and Gas, that's a private company, so no listed stock in that one. So there we base our valuation on the most recent private transaction. But that company is going to drill its first major prospect in the first half of 2020, the Venus prospect in Namibia. So you might actually end up with having a success rate of 100% in this portfolio, 3 out of 3. Yeah. So far, 2 out of 3 is already great, but you could actually get 3 out of 3. So still exciting
potential
times
ahead. Yeah. And basically, if the Nigeria deal was to be closed going forward, which is what we're expecting, this would really change Africa Oil as a company. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I know it's with production, Africa Oil will really become a full cycle E&P company. Near-term production, development project, and exploration. So this slide just tries to illustrate what the company will look like in terms of production outlook and cash flow outlook once the Nigeria transaction is closed. Again, we think it's going to be closed here in the 4th quarter of this year. So in terms of production, you can see with Nigeria, net to Africa Oil production is probably going to be between 7,000 and 8,000 barrels of oil per day for the next couple of years. And then you can see the big step up once Kenya is up and running. If final investment decision is actually made according to the current schedule or just slightly delayed, so late 2020 or 2021, we will see a significant increase in production from sometime late 2023, 2024, something like that, from Kenya. So for Africa Oil, that could take net production up to between 25 and 30,000 barrels of oil per day by 2026, 27, something like that. So just to show how the production outlook could look with Kenya. Kenya being developed and of course Nigeria being closed. And in terms of cash flow, you can see that it will be a bit of an investment phase, of course, related to Kenya. But in terms of cash flows, given that Nigeria closes, we don't see that being much of an issue related to that. So,
right.
So, and if we sort of tie it all together in terms of the net asset value for the company as a whole, you can see that displayed here. It's a similar picture to the earlier one we showed, but this is just to highlight what we think it will look like once the Nigeria transaction is closed. So then, of course, in a big cash position, instead of a big cash position, they will have that producing asset in Nigeria as sort of the foundation, if you will, of the NAV.
Yeah.
And then you'll have Kenya exploration and a few other smaller items taking you to our risked NAV of around 16 SEK per share. So just to highlight that, we think that the stock right now is trading around 50% of NAV, which is attractive. Of course, oil prices is gonna play a role here. It is an oil company ultimately. Yeah. But what we would like to highlight here is that in terms of sensitivity to the oil price on the right hand side here, you can see the NAV at different oil prices. And one thing to highlight here is that compared to many other oil companies, Africa Oil now is relatively insensitive, if you want to call it that, to oil prices. So we think that that there is a clearly attractive investment case here, even if you assume $55 oil or $60 oil. We assume 65 long-term Brent as our base case, but even if you go a bit lower, there's still a clear buying opportunity here, we think.
So that basically summarizes our view of Africa Oil moving forward. And to get the access of the complete report that we have published, either you can contact your sales representative, or for clients in Sweden, you have paretosec.se, and in Norway, paretosec.no. Thank you very much for the walkthrough, Johan.
Thank you.